Hello, listeners, and welcome to this, our 14th episode of the Heresy Accountability Buddies podcast. I'm Jacob, and I'm joined by...
Dan.
Duncan.
Jack.
John.
And Chris.
And we're glad to have you with us. We've got a big episode ahead of us, but, as usual, let's go ahead and make sure that we take some time to start off with our hobby progress. What's everybody been up to, gentlemen?
Well, this week I had a bunch of fun things, so... randomly my yard started appearing a little damp, and I thought nothing of it because we finally got some rain here in Texas, and then apparently I started flooding, and so I've been losing about a gallon every second or two out of the middle of my yard, and so I had to kill the water this weekend. But between putting up with the lack of water and turning it on and off for bursts of filling a bunch of buckets, we've managed to get all of the jet bikes based. So I drilled a hole through the Reaper Base Boss bases that I bought for all of them. They're pill-shaped bases. They're slightly bigger than the LGW bases. And then built up a green stuff mound on the other side of the base, and then sunk that in there and super glued it. And then I found some of my Ukrainian, it's a company called Mini Art, and they make 1/35 scale diorama parts. I got these ordered before the war, and then they got caught up a little bit in the war, but they got over here, and I managed to get I bought 2 sets of the containers, chemical containers and jerry cans, and I got all those built up and painted. And while I was painting, I learned that you can actually recharge old exhausted spray cans. So the spray can I wanted to use was this old GW Camo Green from the early 2000s. I'd never even touched the paint, but for some reason all the pressure had gone out of it. And so I watched a video on YouTube where you push down the nozzle, you take the end of an air compressor, kind of narrow blowing end, you basically make them kiss, and then push down for about 10 seconds, and that gets you about 30 seconds worth of spray paint. So doing that about 3 or 4 times, I was able to get all these cans either painted red or painted green to match the what I was going for. And then I got those sealed, and then I got them decaled, and I painted the lids a different color so that I could then glue them together without having to do any more painting on them. And so now I'm going to go through and do spot colors on the broken word bearer bits that I also primed, some little 28 millimeter Coke cans and ammo, spent ammo shells and things like that. So everything I want to do to add on to the bases of the jet bikes, what I'm going to be doing tonight while we're recording.
Extremely impressive. Congratulations, John.
I'll pass it on to Jack.
What did I do this week? I based 96 models in a course of 4 days, maybe 3 days, and fixed all of the bases on my old Death Guard since the liquid effect that I used on them went south, went sour, started molding, turned white. Not really sure what it did. Kind of odd.
Got a little too real from the sounds of it.
Yeah. I wasn't a fan of what it did. So I went ahead, did custom bases for everything, scratch built. And then I'm doing a swamp display board, so I poured resin for all the bases, and then redid the resin part of all the Death Guard bases, and then did a family photo of everything that I've gotten done over the last 3-4 months, and packed up everything. Now I'm ready for Music City Heresy.
I will say that was a beautiful family photo, Jack. You definitely give me inspiration to want to get all my stuff together.
Thank you, sir.
And I think we need to figure out an event where we can both bring all everything we own and replay Calth.
Can we just team up and pick on Dan?
Yeah, of course.
I don't have near enough points to take on all of your forces you had today, let alone both of you, but
That's okay.
Ultramarine on Ultramarine violence is what we've been waiting for since episode 1.
We've been waiting for this for years.
But what have you been working on, Dan?
So I had a little bit of a slow week, but I got the base red and metallics, although I oversprayed on the metallic, so I'm touching them up right now. Down on my Kratos, did the exhaust effect, did some heat bloom on the Meltagun, and threw a couple decals on, although I kind of interrupted myself because I got 2 decals on, and then I was looking for where I wanted to put the third one, and promptly picked one of the first 2 up with my finger and smashed it. So I decided to call it a night at that point, and But yeah, so I'm slowly working through finishing up this Kratos. I hope to make a lot of progress and getting a lot of detail work and decals on it. I'm a little disappointed, and this is just me. So I don't know if you know the Blood Angel decal sheet, but it's got like some really big decals on there that would be really cool on flat surfaces. And the Kratos just doesn't have a big enough flat surface for the one of the decals I really wish I could put on there. So I'm just gonna have to put more of the little ones and be happy with it. But I was kind of hoping it would fit one of the big honking ones, but it's just not going to.
Have you thought about like cutting them up a little bit? I know. So when I was originally doing my Vindicators, I'd thought about doing like those big panel decals on the Vindicator plow before I started doing the caution striping.
I
Or
thought about it. The one I was hoping to put is it's like an angel with a big sword and it'll fit almost. So it's like 2 to 3 millimeters off, like each direction. So there's not a place where you could like split it in half and make it look like it would make sense or something. I'm not sure. I may have to look at it again and see if there's something I can come up with. Because I just think one of those cool picture scenes would be cool on a Kratos.
Yeah.
And the really big ones that come in there, I think will fit on. I think they're made for Spartan doors, so I think those will go right on there. But one of those angel ones would be cool in here. Maybe I'll see if there's a way I could fit them. Definitely, if they can't, we'll just put tons of the gold filigree ones all over the place, so it's appropriately pretty looking, like it should be for Blood Angels. So
yeah, the other thing I was thinking of is you could do so there's those recessed panels on the Kratos and all the other Marine tanks that I like to paint white, but you could put the decal on so that it's like on the under panel, and so you could cut it so that it's like it's covered with the big red panel, if that makes sense.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that might be something I could do. So, but yeah, so that's where I'm at. So I've got a big honking tank to paint a bunch of details, and but I'm really happy. I thought the red variation. I mean, I'll still edge highlight it all, but I thought the color came out really nicely. My color scheme, so happy with that.
Super
So,
impressive, yeah.
So Duncan, what you been working on, Duncan?
Oh, let me see here. Well, at this moment, I am putting decals onto 4 Vexilla for my Sons of Horus, because apparently while building my Despoilers and Reavers, I forgot to actually build their Vexillas. But this week I have finished up the second of the Land Raver Phobo or Proteus. I got started and finished on the second 10-man Reaver squad. Those guys are done. I started and finished 60 bases. I have just for Marines, and I got all my guys transferred onto their bases. I still have to do the bottom part of the weathering. That's just the dust going up their legs, and I'll get that done either tonight or tomorrow. I got to get the bases rimmed so they're all either goblin green or black, one of the two. And then I got to get the Vexillas that I'm working on right now transferred over, get all that sealed. And that leaves me 100% done for Music City Heresy, unless I want to build a squad of tactical support guys with Volkites, which I kind of want to do. And I have the stuff for. I just don't know if I'm going to have the time to get them done. But that's about it. Let's kick it over to Jamie. What'd you get done?
Is Jamie with us? I noticed he didn't join us for the intro.
Can't hear you, Jamie.
Yeah, he's waving at it. He's got some.
Sign language.
We can't hear you, Jamie.
Yeah, if the app doesn't see you're muted, it might be a mic thing. I guess while he's doing that, a special guest. Do you want to go?
Yeah, this is Chris. In Germany. Here in the States for a week, getting my son back into college. And you guys were doing Death Guard tonight, and that's my current project. I just got started heavy into the Death Guards ago, and this week before I jumped on the airplane, I got my Kratos built, so that's all ready if I get back. And then I'm working on the Despoiler squad right now, but just cruising through getting the whole Death Guard thing completely redone. I had an old Death Guard army. It was the first army I kind of grew beyond that painting style and sold it bulk when I saw Ryan Kimmel's Death Guard after I came back from it, and told myself, you're going to redo. That's they said 2 was coming out. That was jumped on. I was like, yeah, with the old Death Guard. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, you've been posting up the pictures of them. I really like what you've been accomplishing with your Death Guard.
Yeah, I definitely dig those. Those look awesome.
They look sick.
It's been fun, and I gotta just shout out to them. I've taken 3 classes right now, and I just got done doing the one over in England about a month ago, the Walker class ago. But that was it's just insane. It's over your shoulder and telling you, yeah, that looks really good, but listen, it really helps. So just to learn a ton from him, coloring shadows. It's really a lot of fun.
I know the Matt Kane class that I took with Dan and Jacob and Jack really turned my everything I was putting out entirely on its head. So I understand exactly how inspirational those classes can be.
Yeah, I was there for that one. It was the first one up in Indiana at the
Yeah.
fair, right?
Yeah.
Fairgrounds.
Yeah,
that was a
yeah.
blast.
Will
Yeah,
admit,
Kurt was there for that. It was a good time.
That's when we learned just how loud Jack can giggle.
Yes,
Yes, I
yes.
learned that.
John, we've been cutting you off there a little bit.
oh, you're good. You're good. I was just saying, when I took the class with Henry at Heresy Camp, and then the Cult of Paint, definitely increased all of my painting abilities too. So I wish they did come back now that COVID's a thing of the past. So get some more painting classes in.
I saw what Little Legends is coming to Montreal, I know. I think Cultapena started up doing some in-person classes too, because I saw something about they're doing some outside Washington D.C. coming up here. Not
DK Studios is doing one at LVO where you literally buy a Warhound and then paint it over 3 days.
Oh, jeez.
That sounded really cool, but also I ain't got the funds for that. But
3 days to do a Warhound. Knowing how much I had to push to get my 1 Rhino done in 2 days, and then my 1 single infantry that survived the Matt Kane class in 2 days, I'm good.
I'm sure you're not going to finish it, but you'll learn a lot, like weathering and stuff like that. So it's just kind of cool that you're thinking about pushing the classes to models that you could use more of like a display piece instead of something that uses an army piece.
yeah, I saw some. Good, sorry.
No, I've taken a couple of this, and all of them I took their 54 mil. Both of those
Yeah, I did
classes.
that one.
Caleb does a really good. You're definitely not going to finish, but you're going to walk away in a couple days incredible. He just kind of moves through technique, but that's a good thing. He's got a really. I think a lot. Right, I've taken a class on Wargame up 2 with Henry. But it's good to have somebody. Just having somebody look at your brush and say, yeah, it's exactly right. And you can't figure that out. That's the big thing in class.
And if you're at War Games camp, you could always bribe Henry to stay longer by getting him a Whataburger.
I saw somebody was, I think it was at LVO, was doing an advanced class where they were really, really looking at display technique specifically, and asking people what their expectations would be if you were signing up for a advanced high level painting class, and what it would be. And it was interesting because they're like, well, what techniques would you look for? And my 2 cents were, if I'm going advanced, I have most of the techniques covered. I'm looking at more of color theory, making a style your own, some of that stuff than just straight up techniques. I would assume if you're going for an advanced class, you got most of the techniques down, right? Maybe not every one, but you're not going there to learn a specific technique. You're learning a little bit more than that, composition of a piece and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Jamie, it sounds like you're back. You want to do yours, Hobbies for Progress?
Sure. What did I get done this week? Not a whole lot. I've been painting the exterior of my house. If you can see me, which y'all listen to the podcast can't, but everybody else on the crew can. I'm bright red from sunburn from being out on the back porch painting it. I did get some done. I started building out all the saber tanks that I actually have in hand. So that's like 6 of them that I'm getting ready to prep for prime and paint. And so it is going to take a little bit of time. But they're good models, but it's just a lot for me to get done with everything else. Wish I had more, but that's just how stuff works. Kind of like, John with the flooding of his yard with the broken.
Yep. Life sucks.
Yes, it does. Jamie, speaking as a fairly hairy, bald, skin color pale guy myself,
Northern European.
Yes. May I recommend the one thing that I never leave the house without, no matter what I'm doing, and that is a hat.
So normally I am with you. I normally wear like I'm not going to say Panama hats, but like boonie hats, like wide brim all the way around hats, because I sunburn like a English person. today, because of how I was actually using a spray gun to paint, I didn't wear one because I knew it was a little windy and I was going to get paint on everything that I had on. So I literally had a wet rag over the top of my head, and it didn't really. So yeah, I know. Fair complexion people shouldn't be out in the sunlight.
It looks like your head is about as red as a lobster, my friend.
Yeah, and I've put aloe on too. I'm going to put some lidocaine on after we get finished recording.
I don't blame you on that at all.
I'm at the point. I call it pasty white guy syndrome, and I'm at the point where I have to wear SPF lip balm if I'm going to be out very often, because I'll get my my lips sunburnt all the time, and it drives me crazy.
So
I
when
feel you that one, brother. I sympathize.
Yeah, when
I
I
have that problem a lot with him being Scandinavian.
I've worked very hard for my monitor 10, and I keep.
Oh, Jamie, or sorry, everybody. I think that about covers everybody's most recent hobby stuff.
Did Jacob
What-
get anything
I
in there?
think we did miss me.
Did we?
We
the-
did.
Is
Did
there a
you do
reason for
anything?
that?
We did miss me. There was a little bit of a reason for that. I have not gotten to do much in the last 2 weeks. So 2 weeks
Why
ago,
is that?
I had Gen Con, which was a great time, and then came home to the special limited edition flavor of Con Crud, the kind that you can't go to work while you have it. So that's been exciting this last week. Thankfully, symptoms have been pretty mild. I've been okay, but it did complicate the ability to get some of the things done that I was hoping to do. That being said, I was able to get a couple of my battle mechs that I picked up from Gen Con cobbled together, as well as my Osiran Dreadnought from my Thousand Sons. And then today woke up and started putting in the time to get a classic Dreadnought drop pod. Not the new one, not the nice one, the classic one, the one that I've built twice and I swore I would never build again. Putting one of those together, and then 2 Charybdis as well. So lot of drop pods in my future, but hopefully now that I've got some airbrush primer and hopefully for specifically the Charybdis, where airbrush primer is probably not going to be the most practical choice, some good weather ahead, I can get all those progressing forward for Michigan. So, unfortunately, as we said in an earlier episode, I wasn't able to make Music City, but I am still hoping, especially now that I've firmed up my lists for it, to make Michigan GT with Orbital Assault Thousand Suns, if I'm lucky.
I've got one of those old first-gen dread pods, and every time I'd put it on the table, it would break something else. It would break the hinge, it would break some other part. And now I've told myself, I'm just going to strip it, turn it into terrain. I don't ever want it to be deployed again.
I would consider myself up to this point to be lucky. I, the first year that Forge World was at Gen Con, I showed up with my wallet in hand, and I had been playing drop pods in 5th, it might have been 6th edition by the time this came around, for a long time. And I knew that I wanted more than anything a Dreadnought drop pod. So I go and I buy one, and I'm like, you know what, even if I can't use it as a Dreadnought drop pod, because a lot of places around here are not keen on Forge World rules, which was totally fair because that thing was broken at the time. You could just deep strike directly into combat. The more things change, the more they stay the same, perhaps. But the drop pod in question, I got built and primed for my Blood Ravens, or I primed it black. And then by the time I was moving out of 40k and into 30k, I was like, oh, cool, there's a way and a reason to use this. I'll just rescue this from my 40k army and use it here. There is a spot on the bottom of the model where primer will not stick, and I have bathed it in so much dish soap that I can't even fathom what is keeping it from sticking at this point, so I let that place alone, and the rest of the model is painted up, and it has no problems. It is a single cohesive piece that is bound together by desperation and rage and sheer force of will. And I am grateful for it because I have played an awful lot of games with that model, and for the fact that it has not had any of the issues that I would have ascribed to it, especially having built it, is remarkable to me. I can only hope that I can be so lucky with the 2 Dreadnought drop pods that will be part of my Thousand Suns.
So,
And
Jacob,
mine was I bought it back when the Demon Hunters book existed. And for those complaining about balancing new books, that book was so bad. It literally said on the back cover, we recommend that you don't play with this book by itself because it was so unbalanced and crap. But the only way to make the Dreadnoughts arrive any quicker was to take the Forge World drop pod. Like you said, a lot of people didn't like it because it was so jank and had a bunch of rules that no one wanted to learn. But yeah, every time I'd bring that thing out, it would just snap some other way and something else would happen.
hey Jacob, on that spot on the drop pod, have you tried auto body primer? Because like that stuff will adhere to chrome.
I suppose I haven't, but I think at some level, since it always ends up kind of stuck on the table, I have just decided to like bear that as a scar of pride and not try to mess with the model's kung fu.
Have you possibly tried gluing yourself to it? Because once you strip off enough skin, paint will bond to it. I promise you that.
I have, yeah.
There is parts of me that are still in that model. I'm sure of it, but it's just not on this spot.
Every one of those could be a deep fake to murder mystery. There's so much DNA in every one of them that's on the tabletops.
Yeah, the original Forge World Dreadnought drop pods, I have 3 of them. I got them all as gifts from my wife. And yeah, they are some of the most frustrating to assemble models. Like I got to the point where I was almost using like a bench grinder to try and level parts of them out to get them flush.
I'm thinking I'm gonna need to either root around in my garage or figure out what it needs to get. I'm sure I've got a C-clamp somewhere, and I'm betting I'm gonna use about half my tube of green stuff just to get the 2 halves of the base to stick together like they need to.
The one I put together of the 3 I have took me about a week, a gallon of blood, 2 or 4 inches of skin, and like 3 tubes of super glue. And the bottom still pops off whenever it wants to. The other 2 I have, I literally gave to somebody else and said, here's $100. Put them together. Just let me know when they're done.
So that's part of the secret here, is that I would bet that I used a tube of super glue to get the 2 halves of the bottom to stick together, and then at least 1 tube total to get the fins and the center post, or whatever you want to refer to that as, all to fit together, probably closer to another tube each. And I remember once I got the 2 halves of the base together, I got the fins on and glued onto that center post, and I found my 3 biggest, strongest rubber bands I could find, and I bound it up, and I threw it in a closet, and I left it in there for like a month, and I was just like, nope, not gonna acknowledge it exists, I'm not gonna look at it, it's gonna sit there, and it's gonna think about what it's done until it's ready to stay in one piece and get on the table.
Locking it in the basement. Chained to a pipe, that works too.
Exactly. I try really hard to not get into, like, the superstition. Like, I know a guy who, anytime he buys a set of D6s, he rolls them all, and he takes all the ones, and he keeps rolling them until there's only one die that's still rolling a 1. And he, in some way, horrifically destroys it in front of the rest of them, and he is convinced on his life, he's like, that's the only way to keep the whole block in line.
My God.
Okay.
You know, there's dice suspicions. We all have them. That might be a little bit overboard, but kudos to him as long as it worked.
That's just, we've all got them. You know, some people it's the lucky underwear. Some people it's having the same thing for breakfast before an event. Sometimes for some people it's got to bring the same drink to every event because, well, the last one was so good with this. Why would I change what I'm doing? But yeah, just the little things we do here and there.
I gotta say, my
fit.
son came. I'm sorry, my son came over from college and stayed with us for about a month and a half before we came back over to the States to get him back in. And I had 3 packs of dice until he got there. They've been sitting on the shelf for about 6 months because I don't open dice. I make my son open them and roll them first. Then they can go in the dice bag, and that's been a tradition. Poor kid's almost 21 years old, and we're still doing this, Dad. I'm like, please open the dice and roll them.
That's fantastic.
Hey, Jack has one where he literally carries a flower with him and takes a picture of a flower on top of a vehicle every game. So
Yes, she made me retire that one, and by she I mean the girl. She no longer thought it was adorable.
oh, that's so sad.
So, just to throw it out there, did anybody else make it to Gen Con?
I have never made it to Gen Con.
I'll just touch on it briefly. Games Workshop had a booth there, but not as Games Workshop as Warhammer. Weird, but okay. And they had, I think it was a 8x8 board set up for Istvan. So there were a very small number of salamanders and a larger number of Iron Hands, and then a small number of Iron Warriors and a larger number of Emperor's Children, all set up, squared off, duking it out. And apparently the boarding question, not the armies necessarily, but the boards, were done by Dave Taylor. And that was really cool. That was really exciting to see. And they had them relatively, like, front and center, like, you could look at them, you could presume pick models up, because I think I saw several do so. They may have even had a couple dice floating around as far as, like, just giving people kind of quick and dirty, here's how you can play Age of Darkness. I was disappointed to see that their demo stations were all for their skirmish games. I don't know whose idea that was, and I get that, like, demo space was limited at the booth itself. But putting your skirmish games out there just after you've had a game system launch was really disappointing. But, conversely, or on the other side of things, they had a lot of Heresy kits on the shelves, at least the first day of the show. And seemingly less so as the show went on, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw Dave Taylor had posted that they'd kind of contracted him out for those, and he built them in such a way that they could be combined to make single 4x4 tables for, if you go to a store, you can break this thing apart to make 3 or 4 demo tables, and they could be combined to make a 10x4 or a 8x6, and so he made it so that each one of them will connect on every side, and then there was some scatter terrain that would hide anything that made them look too similar. And then he also built a big wall that goes on one end of it to make the big APOC game look cool. So definitely
what you're saying, Jacob, about what's going on.
Yeah.
I can tell you that over in Europe right now, the GW store, I've gone there, and talking heresy, they've got the tiniest amount of it on the shelf. It's almost like they didn't want to talk heresy for like the first 2. And then about 2 weeks ago, I went just randomly Leviathan that I had ordered to the store, and the manager walked over and says, "You're one of the heresy." I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Would you guys please come run a demo for us? I just don't understand this whole heresy." I was like, "Yeah."
Okay, so you're thinking it's a matter where mainline GW just doesn't have enough exposure to feel confident in the system.
I don't think they do at all. I mean, I'm telling you the GW from what I've been told by other people. And they have people that are interested. And she told me, we don't do the rule. We're not heresy. So you guys could bring some painted armies. She's even going to set aside time on her, cut us up on the else. So I think I got the feeling in corporate to say, hey, is a meme, and ended up promoting it, and because it definitely seemed like she was really interested, more interested when I go in there and do heresy. Even over the last couple, I go in there and I order stuff, and they're like, yeah, it'll be. Keep asking me more stuff on the shelves, and they're like, we're just gonna have this. I think there's the paradigm, and I don't even think that's their own. That's their own.
No, it's the same thing here. I mean, like my GW is I'm pretty good friends with the manager, and he tends to push the quick skirmish game. But there's a lot of he has open tables in his store with awesome terrain that he builds. And they a lot of the people have been going in recently, and they're playing 30K. The problem is that he really doesn't teach it, and the only thing that they stock is the big box and like the core rule. I guess it's now 4 books, the rule book, the 2 Legion traders, and then I guess the AdMech when it comes out. But that's all they really stock in the stores. except for like the bigger stores at GW.
I'll quietly float that I felt very strongly that I saw reliably better foot traffic or a larger volume of foot traffic and a larger volume of product getting sold seeming from the Catalyst booth than what I saw from the Warhammer booth. And that was really shocking to I think if Games Workshop, if Warhammer isn't careful, I think Catalyst is going to try to eat lunch.
Yeah.
Do specials at events either. They just show up and demo, and that's about it. So they don't take advantage like other companies. I know Kratos, when they were doing Alien vs. Predator, they were doing like, buy the starter set and buy a couple models and we'll get you a whole army. Every company always does something at events like that where they'll throw in freebies and stuff, but GW, to my knowledge, never. Like, I remember one time they were having a sale at the Grapevine before it closed. Like, the fact that they were having some kind of discount at all was alien.
One of my biggest issues is that I understand COVID and stuff and supply chains, but it's just infuriating when you try to go get items that are almost considered core items for armies and stuff, and they're not only they're not in stock, they're not in stock online at their website. You can't even like pre-order them. So I was just looking. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I literally took clock in America because I wanted to make sure, because I knew that everything, the Contemptor, the Leviathan, it was going to be out of stock within 4 hours of EU, and we weren't going to see it again.
Yeah.
So it is kind of the stock.
Well, I mean, like right now, I was looking at ordering the second Contemptor weapons frame, like the extra guns to go along with the ones that are in the starter box that you don't get with the Contemptor. They're already out of stock. I mean, I know they were in stock the other day when I was looking at them. I just hadn't had a chance to really sit down and do it. And then same thing. I mean, like, desperately need Mark 1C Demos Rhinos. They've been out of stock basically since when they launched. I mean, that's ridiculous at this.
Subject of booths though doing giveaways. This is 2 years running that Parabellum, who makes Conquest, and the First Blood is the skirmish version, and Last Argument of Kings is the full rank and flank. If you show up and do a demo, they give you a box.
Is Parabellum Infinity too?
No, that's Corvus Belli. Is Infinity and Aristea and
gotcha. Yeah.
So let's take that segue of supply chain issues and talk about the fact that not even a hint, not even a mention. We just kind of heard it through a couple of retailers, and then all of a sudden it came true that the mech book is delayed until further notice.
Yeah. We've got the Warcom preview or pre-order article, and all the mech stuff just points nowhere, I think.
Yep. Yeah, they didn't bother to put it up. There's no, not even an update to the stealth update to that article or an email that says, "Hey, we're running late." Jack.
The Spartan pre-order link points to the Cataphracti box.
I think their web monkey decided that he didn't know what he was doing.
Games Workshop, stop firing your interns.
They're too busy writing PDFs.
God.
So before we bear into this, let's start with a positive. Well, okay, we can't start with a positive because we've already talked about the fact that the Mechanicum stuff is delayed and we're not talking about it. But the Cataphracti and Tartaros boxes, which are 10 models for $85, cheaper than what they used to run you. Used to be 10 models were somewhere between 55 and 60, and so this is a marked savings. Unfortunately, it does mean you have to buy in boxes of 10, but sometimes you'll just have to take the wins where you can find them.
Yeah, no, it's a great deal.
I've thought that most of the boxes prices we're seeing on this stuff coming has been a little better than I was expecting and pretty reasonable, to be honest.
Yeah, the Sikaranit. I'll say that the what was it, the Kratos? The Kratos I thought was a little more expensive than what I wanted it to be. And I don't know if some of that's like colored from me knowing that, like, oh yeah, I used to be able to buy a Land Raider for $50 and they haven't changed the sprue from the time when I used to be able to buy it for $50. Weird. But like the Sikaran at $80, is it ideal? No. Is it about as good as we could have hoped for? Yeah.
I mean, I bought the Kratos with my 2 box sets and the rules in it. So, I mean, I was dumping near $1,000 anyway. So the Kratos just kind of slid in there. I didn't even pay attention to what the cost was. Which doesn't make it a good cost, but.
Yeah.
And it. Go ahead.
I was going to say same thing. I thought the Kratos was a little high. The Spartan I thought was I know in the UK it looked like it was a pretty good value. I was a little shocked on the pre-order day when the single pack Spartan was 112. I was figuring it was going to be $90 to $100. So it was it's still great than paying 175 pounds or whatever the resin one is, but I was still a little shocked it was that high. But everything else I'd say has been pretty good value. I mean, the doubled up, all the troop squads doubled up from what they normally are. You're only paying usually it's about an extra $15 compared to what they were single packed. So for an extra, basically doubled up squad.
The Leviathan is also surprisingly strong value relative to buying from Forge World, because I think you can buy the close combat guy and then add the ranged weapons frame or sprue to that, and it ends up $110 versus the, let's see here, your Legion specific chassis are coming in at $90 for just the chassis. That's roughly, before getting arms on it.
Yeah, and then the arms, aren't they 23?
That's what I'm checking right now.
I think they're about 25 a piece. I remember having to buy the graviton.
Yeah, arms are $25 a piece. So you're going from one torso with 2 weapon options for, let's call it 140, to all the weapon options, and I think 2 of every weapon option, even at that, for 110. Very, very nice. And it means that it's not out of the range of possibility for you to splurge for the Legion specific one, but you also shouldn't feel like you're missing out on anything in these build a list budget episodes that we do by going for the plastics and then fitting them with transfers or finding third party bits to kind of spruce up the place a little.
It's a valid point. Anyhow, back on topic.
Oh, yep.
Positivity about stuff. Yeah, I'm positive we're being screwed because apparently the MacBook's being sold throughout the rest of the world, just not USA. So.
Yep.
Is the ebook version? Did that come out, or is it still held back with the?
You can order it. One of our friends
drops on the 20th.
Yeah, our friend Chris Pretty ordered his copy, I believe, after going through, I think, trying to find a way to get their website to accept multiple different cards after having ridiculous problems. But
I ordered it through Warhammer Digital. Yeah, I ordered it through Warhammer 20th, but I ordered everything on my EU sides. I had delayed shit. We'll see what happens to the other side. So I've actually been making out on pricing. I'm buying in euros, and right now the euro and the dollar is about at parity. So it's actually for this whole Horus Heresy would become for an American living in Europe.
Weird question for you. Does it restrict you to only buying different language versions, non-English, or are you allowed to buy the English versions?
They've got all the English versions right there. You say I order from the tab, and because I get my stuff always sent in store because I'm always out of town. And if you're not, German mail is not like American mail. If you're not there, very well might directly sent back to the company after about 2 days. So I order my stuff to keep it up because I've been traveling. But no, you're not restricted. I had a big screw up when I ordered. I went through the whole order in the original box set. GW's website, of course, it's horrible. If you Google Translate on the site, it changes all the German version top. And so you're ordering the English version. You don't realize that. So that was, I ordered everything and I figured it out when I saw there was, had to go all the way back to, missed out on the crate, missed out on the reordered everything and had to call GW. The original order would took about a week just because of that screw up with Google Translate. Yeah, fun.
That doesn't sound pleasant at all, my friend.
I ended up getting everything, like I said, on the crate, which you guys the supply chain a lot long. They're probably putting it in containers, but I know that we've gotten 2 batches of rhinos. The first batch went out of stock. So I had an email in basically telling me it comes back into stock, and it's happened twice. They've gotten stock. Everything comes out of the greater, and they've gotten stock there twice from your tails.
Yeah, I think my local game store said they've gotten 1 batch of rhinos, like 2 or 3 rhinos in, and that was at the very beginning, and that's all they've gotten in. So it's, it's not just the direct order either. So, but they have, as far as the rest of the stuff, I think I've been able to get anything I want consistently through my game store. So it sounds like they're carrying more than some of the GW stores are.
Oh, way more. I went to the FLG. I'm staying with my parents, and Moxie Games, the biggest gaming store here in the area. I went in the other day, and I was shocked what they had on the shelf. They had Mark IIIs, Mark IVs, Kratos, some 4-starter sets, and I went up and asked, like, have you guys just not had any interest? Is that why you got some on the shelf? He said quite the opposite. He said, we just went, we went balls deep. We got the biggest hit we hit from originals they sold. In Columbus, Georgia, we got Fort Bend. He says it's been moving pretty consistently, but they've got really good stock on it. That was because they bought in so much.
Yeah.
Well, and my local store has gotten to the point where I don't know that there's a 40K thing they don't have on their shelf. They've got the entire line. They've got the entire paint line, bases, all the skulls and everything they sell, right? I think they have everything from Games Workshop. So, literally you can walk in there and anything you want to get is sitting on the shelf there. So, I think that goes along with why they've got so much of the Heresy stuff, is just because in general they're all in on GW, a huge GW seller. So
yeah, my local's been having stock issues because I've been trying to get the last Necro book, and for some reason I just haven't gotten it restocked. They've been having issues getting anything that releases. They'll get like a couple shipments of it, and then after that it's kind of empty for a while, unless it's something that GW normally like mass produces a lot. Like the right before Heresy dropped, there was a couple of times, like whenever something's about to re-release 4 or 5 months down the line, they discontinue everything. But even before that, they'll have trouble getting it in stock.
To unfortunately continue our train of malcontent, if you go to try to purchase the the Armiger kits, those pre-order buttons are also broken currently.
Ooh,
so that's
friggin' who?
Swinging back into the positive, though, I was pleasantly surprised that they kept the Contemptor Dreadnought at $60, and there's all the weapon options in that kit, seeming.
Did you imagine the poor guy that bought the gingerbread Dreadnought by itself for $55?
No, they were 75. The old Cordis ones were 75 when they finally stopped selling
the old Calth ones. Yep.
Yeah, I remember we pulled that up at one point. We were talking about that in the podcast. All those extra ones out of the Calth box were worth tons of money, and we pulled it up, and yeah, they were 80 or something, 85.
Yeah, the single pack ones went up to $75 when they started using them for the Custodes in 40K. Yep. So
I'm so glad I only have like 4 of them sitting over there unbuilt that I'll never use.
Yeah, I have one left.
I just didn't like them, so I just didn't do anything with them. Just let them sit and fester like a cancer.
Turned them into terrain. I think turning them into terrain is about the best.
I would kit bash them with Forge World kits so that they weren't as crappy. Let's put it that way. I'd make some arm parts and stuff like that, and then a lot of them, the ones that I had, actually I went into Toys for Tots Army.
Well, I mean that's reasonable. And if we did a Toys for Tots Army again, or if we do one, which I wouldn't mind doing, I wouldn't have a problem throwing that ones from there into it.
Well, I mean, adding stuff to them it almost seems like you're chasing good money after bad. You're spending a whole bunch of extra money to make something that's meh look good, when I'd rather just drop a little bit extra money to make good look better.
Yeah.
Well, and I have one, and I have the Blood and Skull posable legs for it, and a bunch of upgrade bits that I was going to convert one into the Ultramarines character Dreadnought. But like you say, right, you're starting to talk about $120 or $130 Contemptor retail price without talking about all this prices going up. So yeah, makes sense. I'll do that still at some point anyway because I've already spent the money on it. But
what's next, guys?
Hi everyone, Jacob here. Wanted to take a moment to cut in a quick announcement. We've been asked by our friends at the Michigan GT to remind everyone that they currently have 5 open seats for traders. If you're interested in attending this event, which will be held at the Lansing Convention Center in Lansing, Michigan, please go to michiganga.com Once again, it's our understanding that there are 5 trader tickets open. For the next part of our program, I know that we wanted to continue our series from last time and make a point to talk about some Death Guard. And I think that's actually why you've been with us, Chris. So, Chris, what can you tell us about Death Guard?
I sat down and I made some notes. We figured out we were going to do this, and you guys said it was the 14 in the country, so it kind of worked out. Death Guard always been when I was playing 40K. When I got back in, I was, like I said, got in because of the video game. Crept over from other RPG, and I started playing 40K Death Guard. I loved the Forge World conversion bits. And then when Horus Heresy came out, my local store owner, GW, was painting a Sons of Horus army, a new thing. Showed me the Black Betrayal book, and with 40K, completely migrated over. The Natural Leap was good, since it was a run of the 4 that were Betrayal books. I've been off to the. I built my first 30K army and sold it because I built it like when Betrayal came out, and it didn't work the way I wanted it to work. And it was honestly, it was my original paint scheme with highlighting. So when the new edition came out, it was like, I'm going to go back, and so I've started from scratch with it. It's been incredible freaking build. I'm having a lot of fun, and I've got to say, it's awesome. So we'll start out with some quick history. When the Legion started out, they were known as Dusk Raiders, albeit just like some of the other ones. It seems like a lot of the cool Legions all came out, but in space there. But when they migrated out in the star, they finally found Mortarion in Primarch. He was on a death world known as Barbarous. Barbarous is, think, nasty swamp, covered in toxins. The planet was populated by but it's some type of alien psycho race of warlords that ruled over a planet of humans. The humans lived below the toxin layer first, and Mortarion was found by one of these psycho lords. He's raised as his kid, but he didn't really understand what was going on, and he figured out that I'm not one of these. I'm one they prey upon and rule over and turn into golems to fight on the planet. He decided that his adopted dad unite the and start a whole war for the planet, which he did. He was one of the Primarchs that completely displanted people that were oppressing them. That's where Mortarion's whole I come from. It was his idea of throwing off his adopted father. He never finished the whole Emperor. It was kind of like Langren at the last minute. They say that Mortarion was not going to be able to finish the final guy off, but the Emperor came and saved him. Mortarion was really bitter about it. Psychosis thing to come to the real end of what they become a son of. Mortarion's daddy issues are probably what caused him to fall. So Horus came and said, "Dad's a tyrant." Mortarion was kind of like, "Yeah, I thought that." So he jumped ship pretty quick. He used Isfan, like a lot of them. He had a lot of Terran and to purge the Terran. He stopped induction of Terran. He created his own legion. He got his only focused inductions from Barbarous. So he had this element within his legion that he didn't really trust. And Isfan was a very good way to dispose of most of them. And that gives you a good storyline. It's one of those. It's really easy to play Loyalist, Death Guard, or Traitor Death. You've got this faction of people that existed out there. It's not as Death Guard been around. They kind of moved around as a clump. They didn't have a lot of Crusade fleets that left the Death Guard umbrella that was universe, but you could definitely in the narrative find a way. So we've got Mortarion with double daddy, so it made it really easy to fall. He's already got a distrust of tyrants, and his first daddy, the Emperor, were psychic. He is some people say latently psychic himself. Confirm that, but he said it. But he hates psychers, absolutely despises, which sets up his greatest son, Typhon, he has. Typhon is a psyker. He's his first captain, represses all of his psychic when he serves under Mortarion until he sees his chance to help push the Legion into darkness. So I've discussed this on, what's that?
I was going to say, this is kind of what brought us into the discussion we had last time, which was, the question is, if you read Warhawk, and obviously we don't really care about spoilers here, we're kind of figuring everyone's kind of keeping up with the book as they come out, or you realize what's going to happen anyway. But the question is, in Warhawk, Mortarion says that he set up Typhon to kind of be like a plausible deniability into the war, so that Typhon would go out and do all the discoveries, and if something happened or his hand got bit, he'd be able to just kind of cut him off and screw up. But it seems like in Mortarion's mind, he thought, there is something out there that I need to be able to get a hold of. So the question I kind of had was, we went running around a little bit, was, is that Mortarion really think that way, or did like that just happen and Mortarion went, oh, well, yeah, I totally meant that to happen that.
And when we were talking on the chat, I think it's kind of set up to, like a lot of things, 30Ks to be a both. So you can read into it that can support several narrative and gameplay, but I think it's kind of Mortarion after. Yeah, I knew that. I think he had how far some of them were going on. I think he tried to own them just to look like, I knew it was going. And me personally, I think it was a little bit, was that whole Erebus Typhon Rush did with so many other people in the legions with the lodges. And I think it was easy for Typhon to get when Mortarion finally fell. He was so far gone to the treachery. I think he just accepted it. And there's a lot of talking, but there's a lot of talking. During that, Mortarion was going back and doing a bunch of Esoteric. That's where I think we're going to find out later. We're going to get Mortarion Primarch book here next year in the spring, and I think that's going to shed a lot of light onto a lot of things hidden or left open. I don't think they'll explain everything, but I think we're going to get some more flavor that's going to be thrown in Mortarion, because even he tells Typhon to do something, Typhon goes off and waits for him to. So even at the point, Typhon, he's following, but he's not doing everything. I think Typhon needs. And Typhon's one of my.
Yeah, that's why I like those Primarch books, because they go a little more in depth. I need to go back through and hit them all up again. I think the Gulliman book had talked a little more about what he thought about after Monarchia, and then the Lion one went through it was the Rust one went through the fight with him and the Lion. So yeah, they're really good for fleshing out some of the stuff that we wanted to get fleshed out. But yeah, that unreliable narrator. I've been starting the Cyphus Cain books, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's the Scooby Doo of 40K." And I'm listening to him, I'm like, man, he thinks he's the Scooby Doo of 40K, but if you really pay attention to what he's doing, he's lived long enough to know, like, oh, well, if we're going to go siege this thing, I probably need a flamethrower. And he's like, oh, he's so smart. And, it's half truth and half actual hero.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of that. And I think, a lot of people, well, they're not giving us everything. It's like, no, you're not giving, because that's what supports narrative. You have that ability and push that narrative in the direction you want it to go.
Well, and I mean, one of the things that, there's all kinds of people that would love to have background information on the Lost Legion, right? And what happened to them and who they were and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, they're never going to tell you that. And they're never going to tell you that, because the same way that you can make whatever Space Marine Legion you want in 40K, they want people to be able to come up with, a cool story and a narrative. And this is what I think the Second Legion was before they got wiped off the earth. And they're going to leave that narrative open. And I think it's the same way, right? I think, like, there's, the three-headed Hydra and the rumor of a third Alpha Legion Primarch. And I don't think that'll ever be completely answered. And I honestly think that everybody's gonna, there's some big secret and they're gonna reveal a bunch more stuff about what happened in the final end. And I think that's gonna be left ambiguous, and there's still gonna be, the final battle between Horus and Sanguinius and the Emperor is still gonna be, not completely flushed out, because that's the lets us tell the story. So there's the main overriding story. And then you can fill in all the details how you want it to be in your headcanon or games or whatever. And I think it's part of the reason why I think that the stuff is so successful, because they give you just enough to let your imagination run wild with it, right?
Yeah, Dan Abnett had probably the best quote for a writer, and especially for 40K, is, for every question you answer, ask two more. And if you look at 40K and everything, that's really, I think it really helps with keeping us all engaged. If you look at movies and TV shows that have tried to keep people engaged with, the mystery box with J.J. Abrams and all this other types of stuff, it really wears thin really quick when you're doing nothing but asking questions for the sake of asking questions. But if you're actually prying and there's actual knowledge there and there's thought put into these things, you've got someone behind the scenes that's kind of a lore Bible holder and is keeping everything together and making sure that everything's not that far off script. I think it's definitely a good idea.
So go into just what makes the Death Guard the Death Guard. While the Death Guard played really well in 1.0, I think this one leaves a lot on what made them 2.0. Their rules all to it. their warlord traits, the way they've modified some of the way their interaction, especially character named Typhon. Typhon one is a beat stick now, which he really wasn't. He had a lot, and he's got a lot of powers. That his psychic ability makes sense. It's not just he's psychic, which was psychic powers. We'll all agree. Meh. In the last, it's an oversight. You just watch somebody else roll die powers and okay, what did you? So nobody, it was something we fell into. Now they're stuff out and just going to how the Legion works or are their Legion traders. It plays exactly the way you would Death Guard would play. You have this wall of that are advanced. How the artillery comes down, no matter how they have guys fall to the right, somebody just towards you. With the remorseless non-arty or cavalry have no restrictions. If they're pinned, they still move. If they move, they can still shoot as long as so you get that constant grind advance. Even in pinning so far, even when the Death Guard is they're not shooting at you, but they're still going to be closing it.
Now,
which makes them faster.
Do you also ignore terrain penalties?
So it depends what you're playing. So with Creeping Death, you ignore some terrain. You ignore penalties sometimes. Basically, you can't be bogged down by terrain. Nothing impact your. So and it's a little bit more enhanced Creeping. So Creeping Death, basically all the restrictions are, and you can earn so much. It's really nice because now they're getting bogged down. So you ignore some stuff, ignore everything, but when you get into their rights, you start ignoring that would impact. Basically, think of the Death Guard as a heavy firearm. You have very limited, so the unceasing of the troops that are in front of you. So which even plays into like their advanced reaction, remorseless advance. You can only use it, of course, like all the others once per game. A Death Guard unit can 4 up, no pain. They auto pass all their pin, and after they're shooting they get to move. So you can shoot them. And you're actually give them an added 7 in by shoot if they use that admission, which makes their Terminators. It really gets to, or other units. One of the other areas I'll point out later that works really well across the board with them is if you're using some of the rights of war and you start tying in rad grenades. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but you can make vets really powerful. You can have weapon skill 5 guys, and we'll like I said, let me and then we'll get on to. I don't want to get off too far off track, but anyway. The big thing is they're just going to keep warlord traits all play into a lot of this. But one of the warlord traits really fun. It's almost a little feels like it's stolen a little bit from the Conrad Kurz boys, the Night Lords. Is you have Reapers, which gives your warlord. Which in this edition you've got an army that can't be pinned, but now they're putting negatives on you if you're within 12 inches of them. It's basically a minus to your check. And it works on anybody except for a Primarch or a character. So it's really debilitating, and it also gives you that assault play. So that's probably the best of the army. It's the one that you're probably going to see the most. The other two are a little bit more niche. You've got Witch Hunter, which gives you buffs against Psyker. If you're playing against Thousand Suns, I could see somebody pulling that out. But like I said, it's more niche. It just affects Psychers. So I just think Reaper's Visage is a much more popular one. And then you've got the Blood of Barbarous, and basically any unit that they're in, it's within 12 of, Murderous Strike, and all of those types are what it's. So
that one that you said was anti-psyker, is that one limited to Loyalist or Traitor, or is it anybody?
So, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's anybody. So The only thing that I know, but I'm pretty sure the Psyker. So you could use it. I mean, my first thought was the Psyker one was 1,000. If you're playing Loyalist Death Guard against 1,000. I just don't think because even if they're not running out of Psyker, you want to use one rule effect Psykers, unless you're dealing with it. That's where it makes. So like I said, I think the rule you're without a doubt. There's that ability to cause you in that 12-inch bubble. Getting the Rights of War. Rights of War, it's two Rights of War. So, and I'll be honest, I was kind of the Reaping is the first. Basically, you get legions, vets as troops, you get heavy support as non-compulsory troops, and all your characters can have rights. We had the discussion, I know, in the forums about how important and how we've got a lot of rights over that say you can take X as troops, but they don't confer line. So it used to be kind of a given thing. When you turn something into troops, that's what came with it. You basically had to score with that unit. Not so much anymore. I know there's been a lot of debate online on whether that was intentional, whether it's not intentional. But with Death Guard, just know when you're taking Reaping before, where you're pulling these troop slots, and they're now scoring you. You don't. And like I said, that was the reason why I was kind of on the reaping. The reaping was the standard right of war, see a lot more, and it was mainly because everything got turned into scoring, and you had rag, so it was kind of a no-brainer. But the reason you're not going to see, I don't think, as much early on is it's got a lot of negative. Can't make any run move, and you lose all of your deep strike, subterranean, all of your. Basically, you've got an army on the table, and you lose all that immunity, and that's something you don't lose. But one caveat is the rag grenade, and it's the ability to put rag grenades anywhere you've got character. Means that anybody throwing around strength 6 weapon is now doubling. So we've seen, rag grenade's been powerful, and it's going to be really powerful. And it's one of the reasons why you're right of war, because of the one of the combinations. I was on the 30K forum, the Death Guard forums, one of them earlier today, and I was talking to some Australians guys, Tom and Jordan. Shout out, hey guys, we were kicking some stuff around today. And one of the units that they were talking about was Vet with Hand Flamer and Power Mauls. It's an extremely cheap. Power Mauls are only 5 points per. But when you've got Rad Grenade and you've got an entire unit now that's weapon skill 5, it's doubling guys out, those Power Mauls. And if somebody's running at them, they've got to run into the wall of death and flamers. It's just a cheap veteran unit that makes a lot. So, and I think that's one of the things you're going to see bog standard when you're playing against guys. The rag grenades also, of course, the sides. So the sides aren't as common as veterans having power weapons, but that's going to be something you're playing the Reap. But I think the detractors of the Reap, one, not having scoring and not having just those abilities, all those things that we started to like, the deep strike, the flanking, all those things that mobile from you able to get these back, but you're losing is one of the reasons I'm going to shy away from it. Because when you look at Creeping Death, which is their other right, the only limitation you've got is basically you've got to take a Siege Master, a Siege Console, and you've got to, so that is the run right away by Trader. But what you're getting when you're playing, it's crazy. You auto pass all day. So you were asking about the penalties. You don't have any penalty. In your deployment zone, you're getting 6+ shrouded for everything. I'm not 100% sure if that 6+ shrouded is stackable with the other capability the Death Shroud. Like the Grave Wardens have, because they've got their Poison Cloud emitters that give them a shrouded too. Are looking at +5 for Grave Wardens, or +5 shrouded on Grave Wardens in their own deployment zone when they start. You're also talking about urine for the enemy, so difficult and dangerous. And the way the rule is written, there's been a lot of debate. All zones of area, including jungles, ruin, and craters, now become so. It's in the narrative. It's showing that the Death Guard's doing a lot of battlefield prep and throwing chemical warfare all over the board and making all of those places those nice juicy cover saves and everything else dangerous. Which, like I said, I just think Creeping Death all around the more powerful round. And you can also take Grave Ward. So of course they're not scoring, but you get an elite compulsory.
So I wanted to circle back. I know this is going to kind of be out of order. So you mentioned being able to take rad grenades on characters. Yeah. What's the availability of power scythes, and what do those do this edition? Do those have an intersection there?
And I was going to armory, so you have it because power scythes are +2. So your power scythes, your power mauls now become a death weapon against standard. So because they're doubling them out. So when you use that rad grenade,
and it's the same availability. It's the same availability. So any character and Legion subtype and Legionless Astartes Death Guard can exchange a power weapon. So you got to pay for whatever the cheapest power weapon is, and you can exchange it for the side.
Yep. And that size bringing rending 6 potential, and it's giving you that reaping blow, so it's affecting more than one free model. So it's pretty nasty. But like I said, I still think that for a veteran squad at Weapon Skill 5 with power mauls and rad grenades, it's just a freaking beat, and I think it's a beat stick you see a lot. So, but other than those 4 weapons, of course they've always had flamers, but they've changed how they work in this edition a little bit more. They're basically, they've got the same strength value, but now they're just a straight poison roll. You're looking at poison. So on all of your chemical flamers with the gets hot rule. So they're good, but I think we discussed in our forum with flamers, we were talking about heavy flamers a whole lot, and they should, and I know it shouldn't, but it would be neat, especially when you factor the strength value of poison. So it would be nice to see the heavy flamer get us something else. So then what? So maybe a torn effect where it can push out 6, or I think it was Jacob said, maybe give it pin. So and like I said, that's just, but alchemical flamers this edition, they're okay. So, but it's not something I'm going to go, on. I would like to do a poisoner squad with flamers, but it's just not. I think we've all seen flamers and flamers, and even when you get the little bit of a bonus, you still got to deal. So it's just you've got to get so close that it's worth the push. So it's worth the points in the long run. But the other thing they do get, which which works. I've seen them work really good. Place is the toxin bomb. And toxin bombs also. It's not dependent on right of war. They work in both rights of war. So they'll work in any right of war. So basically, for 10 points on your character, you get a bomb that when someone makes every attacking, it has to roll a d. On any roll of a 1, that's a wound. And the only thing they're allowed to do. So, and looking at it, you put Kim Master and Typhon together because they're both characters. You're looking at 2 toxin. You come in and try to attack those, which makes those Grave Wardens, and you're trying to get into. So I think Grave Warden. What's that?
So it's not gonna double up with multiples. But it's when a unit declares a charge targeting a unit that includes 1 or more models with Sig Bomb, then you roll a d6 for each model, and the ones they suffer a wound, no save, or damage mitigation. But
okay, so that's not going to stack. See, I haven't run it that, but the key point in there is talking a one-time thing. Those things are going to hang around.
It is traitor allegiance only. And when we were talking about war traits, Reaper's Visage is the one that's traitor only, which is the leadership modification.
And that makes sense with fear being positive. So it makes more sense that was, but that's the armory basically. It's the power size, the toxin.
I think you're talking about the mauls. The one thing that the difference with the size and the mauls is scythes are two-handed, right? So you don't get that extra.
Exactly. So you're losing that additional.
And veterans with a maul and a pistol are popping that extra attack in is huge sometimes. So
it's going to make them really, like I said, I didn't come up with that one. That was off the boards. What makes Death Guard? And this one guy says, "Hey, this is one I've come up with." And I was looking at the points on. The points are just so low for that vet squad compared to some of the other things. A unit full of that many attacks with that kind of skill that can pull out. It's a really fun thing. I know it's going to be something that's going to give us kind of to have that trench warfare unit. That's kind of like a spoiler, a veteran just instead of type of close combat. You're just going it goes to that War 1. So, but moving on from the armory special, we're kind of unique in that we get multiple terminators. We've got both the Grave Wardens Shroud. With us losing scoring, we'll talk about the Death Shroud. Death Shroud are really 2 of them. They're independent characters. And the other neat thing about them is they've got the retinue. So they can be taken. So they get really fun. And you've got a weapon skill 5 unit. It's got 3 wounds. And you can put a Legion standard. So with us losing some of the scoring units in the Death Guard, it's a definite route to build another unit that's scoring and really hard to off of. It becomes a really, really tanky. They haven't changed the Death Shroud unit a whole lot. Still work the way they always. Just having that weapon skill 5 and that retinue are really juicy. They're kind of pricey, but I think they're going to be stuff that. But the unit you're going to see that. Go ahead, yeah.
I want to take a pause here because this came up on our chat at one point in time, and I think most of us agree that this is the way it works. So one Death Shroud Terminator and Death Shroud Terminator selected as a retinue may exchange their power slide for a Legion Standard and a power weapon for plus 15 points.
So he's not supporting a scythe and a banner. No.
It is generally accepted that I think most of us agree that you can't then re-up that power weapon back to a power scythe for free because that makes no sense. So
I think you're looking at putting a power maul or a sword on a guy, just calling it. So and as we're seeing, if you've got rad grenades, a power maul is pretty nice. So I mean, the power maul, especially if you're running the reaping.
Not to mention a dude with a big mace or a hammer and a banner in the other hand is pretty cool looking.
It is, and I think that's one of the fun things of the Death Shroud, especially with that banner capabilities. You've got a unit that's really characterful, really narrative, and really gives some model entities. It's one of the ones I'm looking for to dive in. We've all seen the big, beautiful standards on all of the where before it was just kind of thematic piece. Now that banner, I don't
remember off the top of my head, but Chosen Warrior means that they're giving and accepting challenges like a character, even though they're not characters. Yes.
Yep.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to make them. And now you've got like I said, it's going to be a really hard move off of something. And then their secondary, I think you're actually going to see it to the Death Shroud. One, because it's is going to be the Grave Warden, and the Grave Wardens this edition. And the reason that they're it was a pain in the ass of the blast templates and the number of blast templates you were throwing out. If you weren't quick with the dice, quick with the templates, it was kind of a pain. You came up against Death Wardens because of all those lying down. That grenade launcher is a point out. It is a grenade launcher, but it hits like a bolter. It's like any so, and it's because you're doing the poison attacks, you're doing the crack attacks, but when you pair that Typhon, we'll go ahead and talk about Typhon right now because Typhon synergizes with the Grave Ward. He should. It's his company, but it's like they really sat down and build two things that work, and that's what Typhon's special rule is Lord trait is comes the Reaper gives you +1 on all of your poison. So your 3-up grenade launcher are now because when Typhon, so which makes that really nasty, and it gives him so those guys are going to play really well with him. And the only drawback is in the rules. They're two wing terminators, but I think because they're so powerful and they've got the additional Kim proofs that they have, which is basically a flame, they decided to. So unlike most of you out there, this is not a weapon skill 5. This is a weapon skill. But get into combat with and exploit the fact that you've got one weapons. You've got to get through all of their wall of deck. You've got to come up on their grenade. And once you get into combat with them, especially if they have Typhon, you've got a guy that would rage. Typhons, when I said that they made him they gave you psychic that I think have a lot of flavor. Before, like I said, he was a level 1 psyker. But what he can do now is he actually has a middle attack that is a toxic cloud, where he's basically using psychic powers to ball of toxic, the chem weapons that are in the air around, and put that into a ball, and he can throw that 24 inches across which basically turns into a large blast of flesh, and so you've got this really nasty psychic he has when you start to try to approach him, where he can potentially pin you approach. If you do get through all of the wall of everything else that you put out by the Grave Warder approaching, once you get into combat with Typhon, his other abilities, he basically has the ability to use to turn himself into a close combat. He can, if he gets his psychic power off, 1 in weapon skill 7, and he gains so you're potentially looking at a weapon skill 7 guy with 7 possible attacks with Lacrim inside a bunch of who are soaking up. It just makes him sick. And like I said, you didn't see that. It was very rare that you saw more a lot. I think in armies they're approaching now, you're going to see Typhon a whole hell. The other character, of course, is and I'm not going to go really far into it because, quite honestly, it's been updated to 2.0 like the other Primar. Plays very similar to them. So he's got the kind of shifting or movement rules where he brought back all of his weapon profiles have in the same way that I don't think he's going to be especially points wise is what I can get a Typhon. So that's the route I'm really so. But they've made it fun. They made Typhon fun. They've the synergies that and they've made their Terminators look like this.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely sounds like it.
So I know we touched on it a little bit during the Ultramarines one, but also did you want to cover any of the legacy units as well? How are they compared to what they used to be, and is there anything that's stand out on those units?
What do you mean by legacy?
PDF.
Like legacy Death Guard? What's that? Oh, the
legacy
PDF.
PDF.
Yeah, what Death Guard
Yeah.
lost most into PDF or got back into PDF were ACE-Q choices.
Yeah, it was like what? Mortarg and who was the other guy?
They got some of their
Rask.
Yep. And to be honest, I've never played one. I don't play Mortung because I don't play, but there's some Mortung pop up just with the fact that he's a strong character and embed him in something. He can be really because he can tank a lot of stuff. Just because of how tough he is. I haven't looked at Rask a whole lot, and the only thing that I really have stared at the PDF and thought about playing, I think the Poisoner Squad you wouldn't be able to run it in anything but Creeping Death because you're going to need a way to those guys in combat because, like I said, they suffer from that if you popped a Poisoner Squad and Termite and it could cause a lot of. But as for marching guys with heavy, it's not something you see a whole lot. And it's too expensive a unit to sit in the back just hold it without any ability part of them. So PDF-wise, big thing. Like I said, if I'm going to play a character, either I'm going to build a Praetor or I'm going to, that's the way when I, so it makes the most sense.
So I want to throw sense out here, and this is something that, so I the play style and all that stuff, I see where people enjoy it, but it's not what I want out of a heresy army. But the thing that makes me want to maybe paint up some Death Guard at some point in time, both the color scheme and the bit in the lore that they leave all of the superficial damage and rust and wear on their armor, clean everything up afterwards. So just the modeling opportunities for the white and the striking that can look. And, I've seen what you're painting up and your stuff is awesome. And, just the extra weathering and the rust effects and the ability to model and everything make, that's what I look at Death Guard and say, if I was ever going to do Death Guard, that's why, because it's just an awesome painting hobby model opportunity. They're not full Nurgle, but you're starting to see a little bit of where that comes from, and you can model in all that extra wear and rust. And I get that Ultramarines have battle damage but yeah, I can't imagine ever putting an Ultramarine on a table that has.
Yeah, they've been an absolute blast. I've been, when I started the 2.0 build, I took some classes with Matt Kane, and I'll be very honest. One of the reasons why I sold my old Death Guard was because when Ryan Kimmel went into MK class over in England, came back and started his Death Guard, I looked at his Death Guard and I looked at my Death Guard, and I don't like my Death Guard. They've been rehomed. They're very, but it was just, it wasn't the way I wanted my Death Guard. So it was, I really, and make an army that was well painted at the same time, also heavily. And I think that's also the problem. People tend to paint it white X all over and are out with it. And it's got to be more subtle, and it's got to be, and that's what Matt's taught me. It's like, you can't just have it be dirty. It's got to be pitted. It's got to have patina on it. It's got to all of your brass have that freaking layer of encrusted. You need to play with multiple rigs. One of the big things he taught me just in this last class that I took the Walker class a couple months, and I'm sitting here and I'm all proud. I'm painting my Leviathan. I've got my shoulders going, and I'm doing my black, and then I've got my highlight, and I'm starting to throw my greens on. And I leaned over to him and I says, "Looks really good." And he goes, "Yeah, it looks, by God, it has shadows raining." I was like, "My shadows are boring?" I mean, I was like, "Yeah, man, if you ever looked into shadows are black, there's always some other color, especially when you're doing shadows." He says, "Reach out to that color wheel, plain or color to model against it." And he says, "And you're doing Death Guard, and you're doing Death Guard that are heavily weathered. So he said, start putting some purple and laying some purple down in those shadows. It's going to make it kind of that infected, bruised look." Dude, I picked up some purple contrast. I tell you what, that stuff's amazing. And I just started in shadow purple, and it was taking a volume knob and freaking 12 automatic, because it produced a contrast. But I would say that everybody that I know Death Guard's honestly a Dreadnought or squad for being at Death Guard, because when you have that white canvas, your ability to really learn and control weathering and learn whether you should put more weathering on or whether it's more ideal. That's been the balance that I've described. It's been like an education. And I won't lie, I probably 5 more large parts of it, squads or vehicles. And then I'm probably going to close the books on this for quite some, because it's the other thing about painting Death Guard is you're painting so much white, you're shading so much white that, and I think that happens with, but white does almost want some color. At least a ZM force would probably like just to completely flip the theme styling. But it is fun, Dan.
That's why I like the white in my Ultramarines. I keep those panels white because it gives you the ability to kind of push it. And even if you've got other areas that are weathered the same, because it's that white and you've got so much of that contrast in there, it looks either more beat up or less beat up, depending on how far you want to push it.
Yeah.
I never forget the when we did the character class, and Ryan was doing Mortarion, right? And or somebody was. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
It was Ryan.
Matt started going into the cloak and showing him the crosshatch weathering to where you can make the cloak look like it's worn through, and starting to show the threading underneath, and so just the subtlety, but the coolness of that, just being able to weather your cloth up and make it look, so much different than, say, a Horus cloth like most of the rest of the people were doing, where, yeah, you want some weathering and some fading, but you don't go so far as to where they would let it be frayed, starting to come apart like that, like, you would with the Death Guard. And, like I said, it's, I agree at some point, I will do up some sort of small force or unit or something, but and that's why, because of the modeling opportunity, the Legion stuff isn't my style, and everyone has a style what they want to play, but that modeling is awesome. I see armies like yours and some of the other ones out there. And
That backpack when Matt was working with Ryan, there were probably color backpack by the time they were done with it. The big smokestacky backpack that. And then not only that, it had all the different shadow colors that were in smoke areas, and all of the corrosion. Just that backpack, I was in awe. And that was, like I said, that was the moment I kind of went home and looked at my Death Guard on the table, and like I said, I was really proud of it. It filled an entire 50-inch by 14-inch deep shell blade. It was gorgeous. I mean, Garrett Lowndes. But God, I really like this army, but I really want to redo it, especially with that was when I started reading the rules. I started the army well before. But when I started reading it, I went through that. It was like, I don't want anything because I don't know what's good. Everybody sucks. But then the second we got the rules and we started, the first thing that jumped out at me, Death Guard, was the Grave Wardens. And I've always loved him as a character, but I just never put him on the, because every time I put him on the table, it's he's your average Praetor level. His psychic ability means nothing. He just didn't play the way he felt like he was supposed to play. And now when I see him on the board, I can see that you get that drama in your head where you can almost happening. And I can just see Typhon's eyes rolling back in this big ball of freaking toxic throwing in an enemy squad, or when somebody's closing in his Grave Warden's, the eyes roll back in the head. He just gets this rage, sides like an psychopath, and goes absolutely makes you want to pay his modeling opportunity, and makes you want to, and that's what it is. But it's a blast. I hope people out there, I'm telling you, Death Guard, if you find anybody out complaining about Death Guard, give them a really good smack to the face. Freaking, if out of all these that got done dirty, they just start rolling and seeing that one little issue with freaking line, just so many come it. And it was you, Dan, that was telling me, it was like, I don't know if line's going to be, it's important, but I don't know if it's going to be important. And then I started looking at some of the combinations, like, just so many ways around this. I can run a lot of squads and have a Destro squad. I can get objective game, and I've got enough objective game.
Yeah. Well, and some of it is, how much faith do we have that they meaning playtesters and the people who are making final decisions ultimately balanced everything and what they tried to do to get it to balance out. And one of the things, the side note here, right? The last podcast that published 12, we talked about putting together a EO kind of group and starting to analyze results of events and look at balance issues and find out, what armies are looking always a little bit better, always a little bit worse, and starting to try and, look at mission packs and find out how that affects it and that sort of stuff. And we actually started that up today, and have got, people representing a lot of the upcoming United States events, and the offers out there. Right, again, hit us up at on the Facebook group or email us, and we're glad to add, even if we don't know you, but you want to run an event and you want to jump in and get, throw in your 2 cents about balance, or help us with our information, shoot us a message, and we're glad to help out and share that, and really want to, as a community, find out what the problems are, because I have a feeling there are problems, right? There's some that we already know about with Contemptor Furies, some other things, but I'd really like to gather up as much data and not be making gut reactions, but be making data-based, considerations to things. And so we're put that together and are trying to work on that. And if you do want to email us, because I know we're really bad about this, we're abbs.heresy.podcast@gmail.com. So you can email us if you're on our Facebook group, send us a Facebook message or post something, reach out to us all. So I think that covers our Death Guard, right? So what else do we have? I have a bunch.
You guys gonna be doing Sons next?
So
I think we're on track for that. We may have to break step at some point with the numbering scheme, but
yeah, we need to do
when you get to 21, you just start with 1.
Yeah, I think that's what Jack had recommended.
Yeah, although at some point,
what I recommend.
I think we have enough people going to Music City Heresy that we could almost do a full event breakdown of Music City Heresy separate from everything else too. We'll see.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm just here because Thousand Suns is one of those. I've got some buddies that play them, and I've heard serious complaints, and I've also heard some just, and I'm not going to go into anything here, but I've also heard some really, I think people are starting to think, I think the initial shock of this is good, this is bad, I think we're getting past that a little bit. And we're now getting into guys who are smarter or guys who are hammer. Like I said, I would have never caught that thing. It would have taken, honestly, would have taken me somebody else showing how cheap the power mode, what the Radgren strengths, just such an obvious cheap unit that's good build for this particular Legion. And I think that's one of the good things about 0.0 is we used to see that happen across the board where people would find these one-off combinations. But I think now, because of the way some of those work, and we've got the varying weapons rules where like breaching has a code and rending has all of these things, there's just so much more nuance that I think that's what we're going to start seeing. We're going to see guys that are matching all these things, points. This works with this, works with this. And I think we're going to end up with those types in several where they really freaking.
So I
think we're going to get more of that.
I do just want to circle back and just put a tiny teaser out there for whenever we do make it to the Thousand Suns show. The way that they have handled Thousand Suns lore ever since A Thousand Suns has done them tragically dirty. It is extremely challenging for me to continue to try to find to follow that lore and to stay emotionally invested in it, given what happens. And I think unfortunately that just gets that much more complicated when my other Legion, Alpha Legion, they have punted just as hard on the lore front. Don't get me wrong, I think both armies function on the tabletop, and I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, just to see the lore just completely boiled off for those two factions is frustrating.
Jacob, you being an old school Thousand Suns player, do you think that's kind of like a creep over from freaking Book 7? So how they screamed about custodes? I mean, that's the way it felt to me when I looked. It was kind of like, we made these guys so powerful, but let's just tone them back.
I think there's one thing in particular about how their Legions Astartes rule does or doesn't function that I would call an overreaction. But I do think the Legion as a whole still works. I just think that the same way I pitched my Alpha Legion in the last edition, and I think I even called this out on a couple shows, the more player agency you give to an army, the greater the opportunity you give to a player who doesn't know what they're doing to get themselves hurt. And I think that's where Thousand Suns kind of sit right now because of some of the risk-reward on their Legion tactics. So that'll be really interesting to talk about on the next show.
That's the window I fall in. If there's a way to take advantage of it and make it run poorly, I'm going to...
Are you all still recording?
We are still recording, but I think we are in the process of probably signing off, unless anybody's got some closing thoughts here.
Well, we never did the news, so we have some new pre-order crap coming up. Next week is we talked about the Aeronautica stuff, but it's finally dropping, and there's some other stuff coming out with that we didn't talk about. What else?
There's not a Mechanicum book coming yet because it's apparently been delayed.
We did talk about the Warcom pre-order now debacle.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that, but we didn't talk about the Aeronautica stuff and see what else.
For people listening, the reason why we're so confused is this is over 2 different nights because we had a slight snafu and got interrupted in the middle of recording. So just so you understand why we're like, what did we talk about 20 minutes earlier? It wasn't 20 minutes earlier, it was a day earlier. So 2 days.
Well, with all of that said, we'll put out one more call for closing thoughts.
I like pie.
Duncan likes pie. We're glad for that. With that in mind and hearing no protests, I've been Jacob, and this episode I've been joined by...
And
Duncan?
Jack.
John.
And Chris. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was fun hanging out.
Thank you for being on here, man.
Chris, we're glad you were able to join us, and for you listeners, remember to stay accountable to your hobby and to your buddies, and we'll see you next time.